The discreet murmur of hurried footsteps resonated through the side corridors of the Basilica of San Lorenzo, one of Madrid's lesser-known architectural treasures. Spring light filtered through ancient stained glass, creating golden patterns. On the worn marble, Gabriel Montero, a researcher specializing in historical heritage protection, adjusted his tie while discreetly observing the unusual movement of people in subtle suits entering through the temple's secondary doors. Something didn't quite fit on this routine April morning. "You're late," whispered Elena Davila, his team partner, a 40-year-old woman with the sharp gaze of someone who has dedicated her life to deciphering enigmas hidden in centuries-old stones. "Father Sebastian is waiting for us in the sacristy, and he doesn't seem pleased with our presence." Gabriel nodded, tightly gripping the folder containing the anonymous complaint that had reached his department 3 days earlier. An academic, suddenly removed from his position at the National Historical Archive, had sent a detailed report about potentially falsified documents concealing the existence of an uncatalogued underground chamber beneath the basilica. "Did you bring Tizon?" Gabriel asked as they walked down the side corridor, referring to the police dogs specially trained to detect components of ancient documents, charred woods, and other uncommon organic elements. "He's with Marcos at the back entrance. We'll present him as part of the structural inspection," Elena replied, adjusting her official identification. "The technical team is already setting up the pretext of checking for moisture in the crypt." Father Sebastian Herrera received them with tense formality. He was a thin man in his 60s, with that characteristic expression of someone who keeps more secrets than he reveals. His dark eyes examined the agents with evident suspicion while explaining the areas permitted for their inspection. "The Basilica of San Lorenzo is a historical treasure under special protection," the priest commented as he guided them through narrow corridors. "Some areas are extremely fragile, and others contain priceless relics. I trust that your supposed inspection will not disturb our routine." Gabriel noticed the emphasis on supposed and decided to be direct. "Father Sebastian, we appreciate your cooperation. Our visit follows a standard structural verification protocol, nothing that should concern you." The exchange of glances between the two men was a silent duel of intentions. The priest finally nodded, handing them a map of the permitted areas. "My assistant, Brother Tomas, will accompany you at all times," he added, pointing to a young novice who waited silently by a column. "Please respect the established boundaries." As Father Sebastian walked away, Marcos Vidal joined the group with Tizon, a Belgian Malinois shepherd with an intelligent gaze and serene behavior. The animal, specialized in discreet operations, moved with the naturalness of one accustomed to historical spaces. "What's the plan?" asked Marcos, a former military man turned specialized technician who completed the research team. Elena unfolded the map provided by the priest on an auxiliary table, comparing it with another she had brought. "There are discrepancies between the official plans and what our informant indicates. According to him, there's an uncatalogued chamber under the east wing near the altar of St. Jude Thaddeus." Brother Tomas, who was not yet 30, observed the conversation with evident discomfort. His hands kept fidgeting with the crucifix hanging from his neck. "Is something wrong, brother?" Gabriel asked, noticing his nervousness. "No, it's just that I've never participated in an inspection like this," the young novice replied in a thin voice. As the morning progressed, the team carried out their supposed technical inspection. While Tizon discreetly sniffed the less trafficked corners, the dog's presence had been justified as part of the protocol to detect possible fungi or organic deterioration in the structures. It was past noon when the first strange incident occurred. Approaching a side room where minor relics were kept, Tizon began to show unusual behavior, Instead of following the marked route, the animal obsessively headed toward an apparently solid wall next to an ancient sculpture of St. Lawrence holding a gridiron, symbol of his martyrdom. "He's found something," Marcos murmured, observing how the dog persistently scratched at the base of the sculpture. Brother Tomas visibly paled. "This area is not on the itinerary approved by Father Sebastian," he protested weakly. Gabriel exchanged a glance with Elena before approaching the statue. Discreetly, he ran his hand over the stone base where Tizon insisted on marking. "We need the structural detection equipment," he decided in a low voice. While Marcos went for the equipment, Isabel Vega, a restorer from the National Museum who occasionally collaborated with them, joined the group. Her presence had been requested to give more credibility to the supposed technical inspection. "Have you found something interesting?" asked Isabel, adjusting her glasses while evaluating the statue with an expert eye. "Possibly," Elena responded, discreetly pointing to the spot where Tizon remained focused. "We need to verify if there's any structural anomaly." Brother Tomas watched the scene with growing anxiety. "I must inform Father Sebastian about this change in the inspection," he said, taking a step toward the door. Gabriel gently stopped. "Him. Brother, I understand your concern, but I assure you we're simply following standard protocol. If we find anything relevant, Father Sebastian will be the first to know." The young novice hesitated, but finally nodded, staying in place as Marcos returned with compact detection equipment. The next few minutes passed in tense silence. The device, designed to detect hollow spaces behind solid surfaces, emitted a revealing beep when passed over the base of the sculpture. "There's something there," Marcos confirmed, showing the screen where a previously undocumented cavity was. Clearly visible, Isabel approached to examine the statue's base in greater detail. Her expert fingers traced the worn reliefs until stopping at a specific point. "This symbol doesn't match St. Lawrence's traditional iconography," she murmured, pointing to an almost imperceptible small engraving. "It seems older than the rest of the work." Brother Tomas approached with evident curiosity, momentarily forgetting his anxiety. "It's true," he conceded quietly. "I've never noticed that detail." Gabriel made a decision. "We need to examine this anomaly more closely. According to our protocol, we must rule out any structural risk." With tension growing in the atmosphere, Eleanor proposed a more diplomatic approach. "Brother Tomas, it would be advisable for Father Sebastian to be present for this part of the inspection. Could you notify him?" The novice seemed relieved by this suggestion and hurried to find the priest. In his absence, the team exchanged significant glances. "We have little time," Gabriel warned. "If something is hidden, we need evidence before they restrict our access." Isabel, with the precision of years restoring historical objects, gently pressed the detected symbol. To everyone's surprise, they heard an ancient mechanism activating, and part of the base silently slid, revealing a small compartment. "Incredible," Marcos whispered, while Tizon, now calm, sat as if his mission had been accomplished. Inside the hollow, wrapped in fabric darkened by time, they found a circular metallic object. Isabel extracted it with extreme care and unwrapped it on a clean cloth. "It's a ring," Elena murmured, observing the golden object with unknown inscriptions. "But these symbols aren't part of traditional Catholic iconography." Footsteps approaching in the corridor alerted them to Father Sebastian's imminent arrival. With a quick movement, Isabel photographed the ring while Gabriel took hasty notes. Just as the priest entered, accompanied by the nervous novice, Elena had placed the object back in its hiding place. Father Sebastian's face was a mask of forced courtesy. "I'm informed that you've found something requiring my attention," he said in a controlled voice. Gabriel maintained his composure as he explained the structural anomaly finding to Father Sebastian. With professional skill, he avoided mentioning the ring, focusing solely on the cavity detected by their instruments. As you can see, Father, the equipment has detected an empty space beneath this section. By safety protocol, we must verify that it doesn't pose a risk to the building's stability, Gabriel explained, pointing to the readings on the device screen. The priest observed the statue of St. Lawrence with an inscrutable look before responding. This sculpture dates from the 17th century, Mr. Montero. It has remained here for centuries without representing any danger. Is it really necessary to disturb it? Elena intervened with a conciliatory tone. We understand your concern for preserving the heritage, Father. Our intention is not to alter anything, simply to verify that there are no hidden structural problems. Modern techniques allow us to do this with minimal invasion. Father Sebastian didn't seem convinced, but after a prolonged silence, he nodded. With resignation, you will proceed under my direct supervision and that of the Basilica's official restorer. Nothing will be touched without their approval. Of course, Gabriel conceded, exchanging a significant look with Isabel. An hour later, the team had expanded with the presence of Carlos Duarte, the Basilica of San Lorenzo's official restorer, an older man with a severe expression who examined each movement of the researchers with critical scrutiny. Under the watchful eye of both guardians of the temple, the team proceeded to conduct a more detailed examination of the area. Allow me to properly document the current state before any intervention, Isabel requested, meticulously photographing every angle of the sculpture and its base. Meanwhile, Tizon remained seated next to Marcos, apparently disinterested now that he had fulfilled his mission. The dog's behavior didn't go unnoticed by Brother Tomas, who cautiously approached the animal. He seems very calm for a working dog, the novice commented quietly. Marcos smiled. Tizon knows when his work is done. He's one of our best elements for detecting alterations in historical structures. The young religious observed the animal with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. How do you train him to distinguish between such specific scents? As Marcos explained Tizon's rigorous training, Gabriel noticed something interesting. Brother Tomas seemed genuinely fascinated by the dog, showing a warmth that contrasted with the general tension of the atmosphere. That detail, seemingly trivial, registered in his mind. After obtaining the reluctant approval of the official restorer, they proceeded to examine the hidden compartment in the statue's base. This time, it was Carlos Duarte who carefully extracted the ring to examine it under a portable magnifying glass. Extraordinary, the restorer murmured, studying the inscriptions. This is not a conventional Christian symbol. His fingers traced the ring's reliefs with professional reverence. It seems to represent some kind of connection between humans and animals, almost like a symbol of universal brotherhood. Father Sebastian approached to observe the finding, and Gabriel detected a subtle change in his expression. It wasn't surprise that he saw in the priest's eyes, but recognition. Was there any documentation about the existence of this compartment, Father? Elena asked with deliberate innocence. The Basilica's records are extensive, but incomplete, the religious man responded with calculated vagueness. Many details were lost during the 18th century renovations. Carlos Duarte continued his analysis. This ring is not merely decorative. The inscriptions suggest a specific ceremonial purpose. He raised his gaze toward the priest. Father Sebastian, is there any reference to special rituals associated with this chapel in particular? The tension in the air was palpable. The priest seemed to carefully consider his response before speaking. There are some mentions in ancient texts about a minor order dedicated to St. Francis of Assisi that had a presence in this basilica for a brief period. But they are fragmentary references, nothing conclusive. Gabriel caught the evasion, but decided not to press directly. Instead, he directed his attention to Brother Tomas, who was observing the ring with evident fascination. "Does this symbol look familiar to you, brother?" he asked in a conversational tone. The young novice startled slightly. "No. That is, it vaguely reminds me of some illustrations I saw in the seminary's private library." He paused, as if debating internally. There was an ancient manuscript with similar symbols associated with an order that promoted respect for all living creatures. Father Sebastian quickly intervened. "Brother Thomas, perhaps you should check if the afternoon visitors are being attended to." The suggestion was clearly an order. The novice bowed his head in obedience and left the room, but not before directing a final glance at the ring and tizon. When the young man disappeared down the corridor, the atmosphere subtly changed. Carlos Duarte, after meticulously photographing the ring from all possible angles, returned it to its improvised case. "I suggest that this finding be properly registered and transferred to the diocesan archive for deeper study," the restorer proposed. "I will personally take care of it," assured Father Sebastian, extending his hand to take the object. Elena intervened with subtlety. "As part of the protocol, we need to document the complete context of the finding. The compartment where the ring was found might contain more relevant information." The priest frowned. "You have already exceeded the agreed scope for this inspection, Miss Davila." "We are only following standard procedures for heritage protection," Gabriel insisted. "If there are hidden spaces in the structure, we must verify their condition." After a tense exchange of glances, Father Sebastian partially yielded. "You have until the end of the day. After that, this matter will be exclusively under ecclesiastical jurisdiction." When the priest temporarily withdrew to answer a phone call, Carlos Duarte approached the team and spoke in a low voice. "There's something you should know," he murmured, ensuring that no one else could hear them. "This ring matches descriptions of ceremonial objects used by a reformist faction within the church after the Council of Trent, a little-known group that defended principles considered problematic for their time." Isabel raised an eyebrow. "What kind of principles?" "They promoted a radical interpretation of Franciscan teachings on respect for creation. They not only preached compassion toward humans, but also an almost fraternal treatment toward animals." Duarte made a significant pause. "They were gradually silenced because they were considered to dilute human superiority in the divine hierarchy." The team exchanged looks of amazement while Tizon calmly approached the statue of St. Lawrence, sitting next to it as if standing guard. "Do you think there could be more hidden evidence?" Gabriel asked. The restorer slowly nodded. "If my suspicions are correct, this compartment could be just the tip of the iceberg. Persecuted minor orders usually created elaborate concealment systems to preserve their knowledge." Marcos, who had been examining the statue's base more carefully, called the group's attention. "I think I've found something else. The wear pattern in this section of the floor is inconsistent with the rest." Using the detection equipment, they confirmed the presence of a much larger cavity beneath the pavement. With Carlos Duarte's reluctant authorization and taking advantage of Father Sebastian's momentary absence, they carefully removed a section of tiles to reveal what was underneath. A narrow spiral staircase, carved in ancient stone, descended into darkness. The air emerging from the passageway had a characteristic smell of old parchment and humidity accumulated over centuries. "Incredible," Isabel whispered, illuminating the first steps with her flashlight. "This structure doesn't appear on any of the basilica's official plans." Elena quickly consulted the documents they had brought. According to the anonymous complaint, there should be an undocumented underground chamber. It seems our informant was right. Gabriel made a quick decision. "Marcos, stay here with Tizon and warn us if Father Sebastian returns. Isabel, we need to document all this before they restrict our access." With flashlights in hand, Gabriel and Eleanor began to descend the narrow staircase while Isabel meticulously photographed the entrance. Each step seemed to take them deeper into the basilica's hidden history. As they descended, the humidity increased and the air became denser. The stone walls were decorated with faint remains of frescoes, almost erased by time, showing human figures in attitudes of reverence toward various animals. These frescoes don't correspond to conventional religious art from any period, Elena observed, illuminating the discolored images. They seem to represent a relationship of equality between humans and animals, almost like an alternative vision of creation. After descending about 20 steps, they reached a landing where they faced a heavy door of rusted iron. The door was closed, with no visible lock or obvious mechanism to open it. "How should we proceed?" Elena asked, examining the doorframe. Gabriel carefully illuminated the edges, looking for some clue. "If the statue's mechanism is any indication, there must be some kind of hidden system to open this too." His fingers traced the worn reliefs around the door until he noticed an irregularity in one of the stones. He pressed gently and heard a metallic click. The heavy door began to move with surprising fluidity for its apparent age. "It seems someone has been maintaining this mechanism," Gabriel murmured as the door opened completely, revealing a long corridor dimly illuminated by the light of their flashlights. The walls of the hallway were covered with inscriptions in archaic Latin and more discolored frescoes. At the end of the tunnel, they could distinguish the outline of a wider room. "Elena, this is extraordinary," Gabriel whispered as they cautiously advanced. "We're facing a discovery that could rewrite part of ecclesiastical history." The corridor led to a circular room of polished stone. In the center was an ancient oak table, and around the room were shelves lined with carefully sealed wooden boxes protected with thick fabrics. On the table rested several documents covered by centuries of dust, but in a surprisingly good state of preservation. Eleanor, with expert hands gloved in conservation gloves she always carried, carefully examined one of the texts. "My God," she exclaimed quietly as she read. "These are internal administrative records of an order called Brotherhood of Sacred Creation. They contain decisions and deliberations completely different from the official versions preserved in public archives." Gabriel approached to observe the documents. "What period are we talking about?" "Late 16th century, early 17th, Elena replied, delicately turning the pages. "Right after the Reformation. And look at this." She pointed to a specific paragraph. "They explicitly mention their efforts to preserve an interpretation of Catholic doctrine that included respect and protection of animals as an essential part of divine creation." The sound of footsteps approaching down the hallway interrupted their discovery. Both tensed, preparing for a confrontation, when the figure of Brother Tomas emerged from the dimness, his expression a mix of fear and determination. "You shouldn't be here," Brother Thomas whispered, with a mixture of fear and fascination in his gaze. "Father Sebastian is looking for you. He's called the bishopric." Gabriel and Elena exchanged concerned looks. The discovery was too important to abandon now, but they also knew their time was running out quickly. "Brother Tomas," Gabriel said in a calm voice, "this is a significant historical finding. These documents could reveal unknown aspects of church history." The young novice slowly approached, drawn by the ancient manuscripts. "I know," he responded in a barely audible voice. "I've heard rumors about this chamber since I arrived at the seminary. Some of the older priests mentioned in whispers the existence of a secret order that was silenced." Elena offered him one of the documents. "Can you read ecclesiastical Latin?" Brother Thomas nodded, taking the parchment with trembling hands. As his eyes scanned the lines, his expression changed from amazement to a deeper emotion. "The Brotherhood of Sacred Creation," he murmured. "They argued that all living beings shared the same divine spark. They considered mistreating any creature an offense against God himself." He raised his gaze with bright eyes. These teachings contradict centuries of official interpretation about human supremacy in creation. Gabriel discreetly took out his phone and began photographing the most relevant documents. Why do you think this order was suppressed? The novice returned the document to the table with a gesture of deep reflection. The post-Tridentine Church sought doctrinal uniformity. Any alternative interpretation was viewed with suspicion, especially after the fragmentation caused by the Reformation. He paused, as if remembering something. But there's more. In the seminary, there were rumors that this brotherhood possessed knowledge that challenged the established hierarchy between creatures. Elena, meanwhile, had begun to examine the sealed boxes surrounding the room. With extreme care, she opened one of them, revealing more manuscripts and small ceremonial objects, all related to the mysterious order. These manuscripts contain detailed illustrations of rituals where animals participated in religious ceremonies, she commented, showing a parchment with delicate illustrations, not as sacrifices, but as respected participants. Brother Tomas approached to get a better look. This directly contradicts the anthropocentric vision that has dominated theology for centuries, he murmured. I understand why it was considered dangerous. A noise on the staircase alerted them. Gabriel quickly put away his phone, while Eleanor carefully closed the box she had opened. We need to get out of here, the Brother Tomas urged. Father Sebastian has summoned representatives from the bishopric to seal this area. Is there another exit? Gabriel asked. The novice hesitated for a moment, as if fighting an internal battle, before nodding. Yes, these passageways used to connect with the old cloister. Follow me. As he guided them through a narrow, dark-side corridor, Brother Tomas began to speak in a low voice, as if needing to share a burden too heavy to bear. I entered the seminary because since childhood I felt a special connection with all living beings, he confessed. I always believed that sensitivity was part of my vocation, but over time they taught me to consider it a sentimental weakness, something I should overcome to be a true servant of God. The passageway narrowed increasingly, forcing them to advance. In single file, the air was increasingly scarce, but a faint glow at the end indicated they were approaching an exit. Why are you helping us? Elena asked with genuine curiosity. The young religious stopped for a moment before answering. Because when I saw that dog Tizon, looking directly at the ring's hiding place, I felt it couldn't be coincidence, as if I were destined to rediscover these lost teachings. Finally, the passage led to a small maintenance room that connected with the basilica's side cloister. Brother Tomas checked that no one was there before indicating that they should exit. You must hurry, he warned. As soon as they notice your absence, they'll check all exits. Gabriel made a quick decision. We need to talk to Isabel and Marcos. Warn them. I'll take care of it, the novice offered. I can return without raising suspicions. Before separating, Elena took the young man's hand. Will you be all right? This could have consequences for you. A calm smile illuminated Brother Tomas's face. I am where I should be, he replied with a serenity that contrasted with his previous nervousness. Perhaps my purpose has always been to help rediscover these forgotten truths. As Gabriel and Elena slipped away toward the main entrance, where they had left their vehicle, commotion began to spread through the basilica. In the distance, they could see Father Sebastian gesturing energetically while talking to two men in dark suits who seemed to belong to some official department of the bishopric. Do you think we'll manage to leave without being intercepted? Elena murmured, maintaining an appearance of normality as they walked toward the exit. Act naturally, Gabriel responded in a low voice. If they stop us, we're just investigators who finished their routine inspection. Just as they were about to reach the main doors, Father Sebastian's voice resonated behind them. Mr. Montero, Miss Davila, you cannot leave yet. They turned slowly to face the priest, whose countenance reflected a mixture of irritation and concern. "Father Sebastian," Gabriel greeted with feigned surprise, "we were looking for you to inform you that we have completed our basic structural inspection." "I'm afraid you've done much more than that," the priest responded coldly. "One of my assistants reports that you accessed restricted areas without authorization. I must ask you to accompany me to my office. The diocesan heritage representative wishes to speak with you." Elena intervened with a serene voice. "We understand your concern, Father. However, our authorization for this inspection comes directly from the National Heritage Protection Department. Any concerns must be channeled through our superiors." The tension was palpable. Gabriel noticed that Isabel and Marcos were discreetly approaching from one of the side corridors. Tizon walked beside them, apparently calm but alert. One of the men in dark suits approached, introducing himself as Javier Olmedo, delegate of ecclesiastical heritage. "Findings in sacred precincts are under special jurisdiction," he explained with an authoritative tone. "We need to verify exactly what you have discovered and documented." Gabriel maintained his composure. "Of course, Mr. Olmedo. We all want to protect historical heritage. Our preliminary findings will be available through official channels as dictated by protocol." As the tense exchange continued, Gabriel noticed something unusual. Tizon, normally disciplined, had separated from the group and now sat calmly next to a young woman who was observing the scene from a distance. The woman, dressed in casual clothes, seemed to be discreetly taking notes. "Marcos," Gabriel called, making a subtle gesture toward where the dog was. Father Sebastian, following the direction of his gaze, frowned upon seeing the stranger. "Who is that person?" "I don't know," Gabriel responded honestly. "Tizon seems to recognize her." Isabel took advantage of the distraction to approach Elena and whisper something in her ear. Elena nodded slightly before addressing the group again. "Gentlemen, we are all committed to heritage preservation. I assure you that our report will detail all findings of historical relevance, following established protocols." The young woman who had been observing then approached the group. "Dr. Lucia Mendoza, Complutense University," she introduced herself with professional confidence. "Specialist in 16th century ecclesiastical history, Professor Alejandro Ferrer sent me to advise the technical team." Gabriel and Elena exchanged puzzled looks. They didn't know any Dr. Mendoza, nor had they requested academic advice. However, Professor Ferrer's name, a recognized historian and occasional collaborator with their department, seemed to legitimize her presence. "We were not informed of any academic advisor," Father Sebastian objected, with evident suspicion. "The request was processed this morning," Dr. Mendoza responded with absolute serenity, showing a credential that appeared authentic. "Multidisciplinary investigations require diverse perspectives, especially when involving findings of possible historical significance." Most surprising was that Tizon, the detector dog, remained seated next to the newcomer with an attitude of complete trust, as if he had known her all his life. The ecclesiastical heritage delegate seemed disconcerted by this new development. After briefly consulting with Father Sebastian, he addressed the group in a more conciliatory tone. "I propose that we meet tomorrow at the bishopric to formally discuss the findings and establish a joint investigation protocol," he suggested. "Meanwhile, any evidence or documentation will remain under shared custody." Gabriel nodded, recognizing the offer as a diplomatic exit from the situation. "That seems reasonable to us, Mr. Olmedo." When they finally managed to leave the basilica, with the promise to return the following day for the formal meeting, Gabriel confronted the mysterious Dr. Mendoza in the parking lot. "Who are you, really?" he asked straightforwardly. "And why does Tizon seem to know you?" "Dudil." The woman smiled enigmatically as she caressed the dog, who showed unusual affection toward her. Let's say we have common interests, she responded. Professor Ferrer didn't officially send me, but he did tell me about the research you were conducting. Marcos approached, observing with curiosity the interaction between the dog and the stranger. It's strange. Tizon never reacts like this with strangers. I'm not exactly a stranger to him, the woman explained. I participated in part of his special training 3 years ago, when I still worked for the Historical Heritage Conservation Program. Isabel, who had remained silent, analyzing the situation, then intervened. You're Lucia Vidal, aren't you? The historian, who was removed from her position in the National Archive after presenting a controversial theory about potentially falsified ecclesiastical documents. The woman slowly nodded. I see you've done your homework, Miss Vega. Yes, I'm Lucia Vidal. Mendoza was my maiden name, which I used today to avoid raising immediate alarms. Gabriel quickly connected the dots. You sent the anonymous complaint that initiated our investigation. Precisely, Lucia confirmed. After years investigating fragmentary references about a silenced religious order, I found concrete evidence of their existence in documents that passed through my hands at the National Archive. When I tried to delve deeper into the subject, I was suddenly reassigned and then removed under the pretext of departmental reorganization. Elena extracted a small notebook from her purse and began taking notes. What do you know exactly about the Brotherhood of Sacred Creation? They were more than a simple reformist faction, Lucia explained as they walked toward a nearby cafe to speak with greater privacy. They represented a revolutionary interpretation of the relationship between humans and animals within Catholic doctrine. They believed that all living beings participated equally in divine grace. Gabriel thought about Brother Tomas and his evident fascination with the discovered documents. Do you think there could be contemporary followers of these teachings? Lucia smiled as Tizon lay down calmly at her feet. I'm convinced of it. In fact, I suspect that some individuals within the church itself continue to preserve these ideas, in secret, waiting for the right moment to reveal them to the world again. The Santa Teresa Café, located a few streets from the Basilica of San Lorenzo, had become the team's improvised headquarters. Evening was falling over Madrid as Gabriel, Elena, Isabel, Marcos, and the newly revealed Lucia Vidal shared what each had discovered. Tizon rested peacefully under the table, occasionally raising his head when a familiar name was mentioned. What we found in that underground chamber could change the historical perception of certain ecclesiastical doctrines, Lucia explained, as she spread some copies of ancient documents she had compiled during her years of research on the table. The Brotherhood of Sacred Creation wasn't a heretical group, as they were made out to be. They were devout Catholics who interpreted the scriptures with a more inclusive approach toward all living creatures. Gabriel reviewed the photographs he had hastily taken in the secret chamber. These documents appeared to be minutes of internal meetings. They mentioned theological debates about the moral status of animals in creation. What intrigues me, Elena intervened, is how they managed to keep this chamber secret for centuries. And more importantly, why was this police dog able to find it when generations of restorers and archaeologists couldn't? Everyone looked at Tizon, who raised his ears as if understanding they were talking about him. Marcos stroked the animal's head. Tizon is trained to detect specific organic compounds present in ancient papers and woods treated in certain ways. But even so, his behavior was unusual. He seemed to know exactly where to look. It's not a coincidence, Lucia affirmed with a serene voice. During my research, I found references to Brotherhood rituals that included the presence of animals, especially dogs, in important ceremonies. They believed that certain animals possessed a special sensitivity to perceive the sacred. Isabel, who had been meticulously examining the photographs of the found ring, looked up. The symbols on this Ring are fascinating. They aren't typical of traditional Catholic iconography, but they aren't pagan either. They seem to represent an integrative vision between the human and animal. The ring must be the key to something bigger, Gabriel reflected. The way it was hidden, its specific location next to the statue of St. Lawrence, everything suggests a purpose beyond being a simple ceremonial object. A text message interrupted the conversation. It was from Brother Tomas. "He's contacted me," Gabriel announced with surprise. "He says he has urgent information, but can't speak on the phone. He wants to meet with us tonight." Lucia seemed concerned. "We must be cautious. Father Sebastian has surely already informed his superiors about our discovery. They'll be watching Brother Tomas." "Do you trust him?" Marcos asked. Gabriel remembered the sincerity in the young novice's eyes, his genuine fascination with the discovered documents. "Yes, I trust him. I believe he's as interested as we are in discovering the truth." They decided to meet Brother Tomas in Retiro Park, a public place but with enough discreet spaces for a private conversation. Night had already fallen when the young man appeared, dressed in civilian clothes instead of his usual religious attire. "Thank you for coming," said Brother Tomas, visibly nervous but determined. "After you left, Father Sebastian received a call from Cardinal Monteagudo. They've declared the underground chamber a restricted area due to structural risk. They're moving all the documents to a secret archive of the Archbishopric. They're hiding the evidence," Elena concluded. "It's not that simple," the novice replied. "There's an internal struggle. Some members of the hierarchy believe these discoveries should be openly studied, while others fear they might confuse the faithful with unorthodox interpretations." Gabriel noticed that the young man was tightly holding something in his hand, like a precious treasure. "What do you have there, Tomas?" The novice slowly opened his hand, revealing the golden ring with inscriptions they had found at the base of the statue. "I managed to take it before they sealed everything. I felt I needed to protect it. The surprise was general. Do you realize the risk you've taken?" Lucia asked. "I know," he responded, with unexpected calmness, "but I couldn't allow this symbol to be hidden again. Not when I was finally beginning to understand my own path." The young man told them how, growing up in a small village in Galicia, he had always felt a special connection with animals. That sensitivity had led him to the seminary, seeking a way to integrate his love for all creatures with his Catholic faith. "I always felt like a stranger, even among my fellow seminarians," he confessed. "When they found that chamber and I read about the Brotherhood, for the first time I felt I wasn't alone in my way of understanding divine creation." Isabel examined the ring with an expert eye, in the light of a nearby street lamp. "This object must be at least 400 years old. The craftsmanship is extraordinary." She pointed to the inscriptions. "These aren't simple decorations. They seem to form some kind of coded message." Tomas nodded. "After you left, I consulted some ancient texts in the seminary's private library. I believe the ring wasn't just a symbol of belonging to the Brotherhood, but also a key." "A key," Gabriel repeated with growing interest. "According to the references, I found the Brotherhood had several secret meeting places. This ring not only identified its members, but also gave them access to those sacred spaces." Elena took notes quickly. "Do you think there could be more hidden chambers like the one we found?" "I'm almost certain," the novice replied. "The ring's inscriptions contain clues about their location. It mentions the garden where Francis speaks with the wolf." Lucia sat up abruptly. "The north cloister of the Basilica of San Francisco el Grande. There's a deteriorated fresco depicting St. Francis of Assisi talking to the wolf of Gubbio. I always thought it strange that the fresco was so hidden, almost as if they didn't want to draw attention to it." The enthusiasm was palpable, but Marcos introduced a note of caution. "If Father Sebastian and the bishopric are mobilizing to hide these discoveries, we must be extremely careful. This is no longer just about historical research, but something that could have deeper implications. What do you suggest? Gabriel asked. We need to document everything professionally before making any additional moves. If we find more evidence, it must be properly preserved so they can't dismiss it as an invention or misinterpretation. Isabel, who had remained silent, absent-mindedly caressing Tizon, spoke then. I have a friend at the Heritage Conservation Institute. She could help us officially document the ring and any other findings without immediately alerting ecclesiastical authorities. We should also consider making digital copies of everything, Elena added, in case they try to confiscate the physical evidence. While discussing the next steps, Gabriel observed the interaction between Tizon and Brother Tomas. The dog, normally wary of strangers, had approached the novice and now rested his head on his knee as if they had been friends all their lives. It's extraordinary, Lucia commented, following Gabriel's gaze. Tizon seems to recognize something special in you, Tomas. The young man smiled as he gently caressed the animal. Perhaps he recognizes someone who shares the same vision as those whom they trained him to find. The observation provoked a reflective silence in the group. What if that's the real story here? Gabriel finally suggested. Not just a forgotten religious order, but a lost connection between humans and animals that someone considered important enough to preserve in secret for centuries. The theory resonated strongly among them. If they were right, what they had discovered went beyond a simple historical fact. It was a philosophy of life that had been deliberately hidden. They agreed to meet again the next day to discreetly visit the Basilica of San Francisco el Grande and explore the North Cloister in search of the mentioned fresco. Brother Tomas, though aware of the risks to his vocation, was determined to continue helping them. There's something else you should know, the novice added before saying goodbye. Among the documents I managed to read before they removed them, there were mentions of a special ceremony that the Brotherhood performed during the spring equinox, a ritual of renewal of commitment to all creatures of creation. The spring equinox? Elena repeated with interest. That was just 3 days ago. Tomas nodded. Exactly. And according to the text, the ceremony had to be performed in a place where the dawn light illuminates all God's creatures equally. And it could be anywhere, Marcos observed with some discouragement. Not anywhere, Lucia responded, with a gleam of enthusiasm in her eyes. In 16th century religious architecture, that phrase would have a very specific meaning. It would refer to a space designed with astronomical precision, where the light of the rising sun on a particular date would illuminate an exact point. Isabel checked something on her phone. The Basilica of San Francisco has an almost perfect east-west orientation. If such a place exists within the complex, it would be ideal for observing solar phenomena like the equinox. Gabriel looked at the ring now resting in the palm of his hand, a tangible testimony of a spiritual tradition almost erased from history. Then it's decided. Tomorrow we'll follow the clue of the wolf fresco and look for that special space. As they said goodbye, Brother Tomas approached Gabriel. There's something that troubles me, he confessed in a low voice. Since they found the chamber, I've noticed unknown people watching the basilica. They don't seem to be from the bishopric or any official authority. Do you think someone else is interested in these discoveries? Gabriel asked, feeling a new layer of mystery being added to the already complex situation. It's possible, the novice replied. Perhaps the Brotherhood's secrets have been guarded by more than one group over the centuries. When each went their own way, Gabriel couldn't stop thinking about the implications of everything discovered. An ancient ring, a forgotten order, hidden documents that challenged the traditional interpretation of the relationship between humans and animals within Christianity. How many more layers of mystery remained to be unveiled? That night, while reviewing the photographs taken in the secret chamber, he noticed something he had initially overlooked. In one of the images, partially visible in the background of a document, appeared a circular diagram with symbols similar to those on the ring, but arranged in the form of a calendar or star map. Gabriel enlarged the image as much as possible, trying to decipher those barely perceptible symbols. As he studied them, an idea began to form in his mind. If the spring equinox was significant for the Brotherhood, perhaps it wasn't just for its spiritual symbolism, but because it marked the exact moment to access something more important. But what if the real secret wasn't in the documents they had found, but in what those documents pointed to? A place, a precise moment, a greater revelation that had remained hidden for centuries, waiting to be rediscovered by those who shared the vision of that forgotten brotherhood. With that unsettling possibility in mind, Gabriel finally fell asleep, dreaming of golden rings, hidden passageways, and dogs that seemed to know more than any animal should know. The next morning dawned with a clear sky over Madrid, almost as if the universe itself wanted to facilitate the search the group was about to undertake. Gabriel had slept barely a few hours, too excited by the possibilities opening before them. At 8 o'clock sharp, the team met at a discreet cafe across from the Basilica of San Francisco el Grande. "I've been researching more about the Brotherhood," Elena commented as she spread some printouts on the table. According to fragments of ecclesiastical chronicles from the period, they were officially dissolved in 1603, accused of promoting confused doctrines about the nature of divine creation. But there are indications they continued meeting in secret for at least another century. "The fascinating thing," Lucia added, "is that there's no record of trials or formal proceedings against them, unlike other groups considered heretical. It's as if someone had wanted to eliminate their existence from official history without drawing too much attention." Brother Thomas, who had arrived dressed again in civilian clothes, kept the ancient ring hidden in a small cloth pouch hanging from his neck. "This morning, I secretly consulted some restricted archives at the seminary," he confessed in a low voice. "I found a brief mention of a minor order dedicated to honoring the entirety of creation that maintained a secret chapel in this very basilica." "Did you get any clue about its exact location?" Gabriel asked. "Only that it was related to the fresco of St. Francis and the Wolf, and that it somehow had a window to the sky that speaks once a year." Isabel, who had been reviewing architectural plans of the basilica on her tablet, looked up with interest. "That definitely sounds like an astronomically aligned opening. Many ancient churches have architectural elements designed to interact with sunlight. On specific dates, the plan for the day was simple but risky. They would enter the basilica as normal visitors and discreetly search for the mentioned fresco in the north cloister. Tizon, obviously, couldn't accompany them inside a religious building without raising suspicions, so Marcos would stay with him in the vicinity, ready to come if they needed help. Upon entering the majestic temple, they were greeted by the atmosphere of devotees in morning prayer and tourists admiring the impressive architecture. Following Lucia's directions, they headed toward the north cloister, a less visited area of the complex. "Access to the cloister is restricted," a security guard informed them when they tried to pass. "Restoration works." Gabriel exchanged a glance with Elena. They hadn't foreseen this obstacle. "I'm a restorer from the National Heritage," Isabel intervened, showing her professional identification. "We're evaluating the condition of some frescoes for a catalogue of Franciscan sacred art." The guard examined the credential with suspicion. "I have no notification of any technical visit scheduled for today." Brother Thomas stepped forward, surprising everyone. With a confidence they hadn't seen in him before, he addressed the guard in a tone that mixed kindness with authority. "Brother," he said, deliberately using a fraternal address, "I understand your commitment to security. I myself serve at the Basilica of San Lorenzo, This visit was coordinated through the Vicariate for the Franciscan Iconography Documentation Project. He made a small pause before adding, Father Anselmo gave his personal approval. The mention of Father Anselmo, a respected ecclesiastical authority whom the novice knew from his seminary, had the desired effect. The guard, though still doubtful, finally nodded. You may pass, but please don't touch anything. The restorations are delicate. Once inside the cloister, a serene space surrounded by elegant arches and modest gardens, Gabriel looked at the young novice with admiration. That was impressive, Tomas. The young man blushed slightly. Sometimes truth can have different layers. The documentation project really exists, though we aren't officially part of it. Lucia guided them through the cloister, searching for the mentioned fresco. It should be somewhere in this north gallery, the least illuminated. After several minutes of searching, Isabel was the one who finally found it. Partially hidden by a column, a deteriorated fresco showed the famous scene of Saint Francis of Assisi speaking amicably with the wolf of Gubbio. Unlike more well-known representations, in this version, the saint and the animal seem to be at the same level, almost as equals in a spiritual dialogue. It's beautiful, Elena murmured, studying the details. Look how the artist depicted the wolf's eyes, with an intelligence and dignity uncommon in religious art of the period. Gabriel carefully examined the area around the fresco, looking for some sign or hidden mechanism. If the ring is truly a key, there must be some type of lock. Brother Tomas took the ring from his pouch and studied it in the light filtering through the cloister windows. The inscriptions, they seemed to match some elements of the fresco. Isabel, with the trained eye of a restorer, noticed something unusual. Look at this detail at the base of the fresco. There's a small circle carved into the stone, almost imperceptible under the layer of deteriorated paint. Indeed, hidden among the decorative details at the base of the fresco, there was a small circle that approximately matched the size of the ring. Should we try it? Gabriel asked, aware that they were in a restricted area and could be discovered at any moment. We've come too far to doubt now, Lucia responded with determination. Carefully, Brother Tomas placed the ring in the circular cavity. At first, nothing happened, but when he slightly turned the ring, adjusting the inscriptions to match the position of the sun and moon in the fresco, a soft, mechanical click was heard. A section of the wall next to the fresco moved slightly inward. Incredible, Isabel whispered, observing how part of what seemed to be solid stone revealed itself to be a perfectly camouflaged mechanism. Gabriel gently pushed the panel, which yielded without resistance, revealing a narrow passageway. We need light, he murmured as he took out his phone's flashlight. The passage was narrow, barely enough for one person to pass sideways. The walls, unlike the chamber they had found in the Basilica of San Lorenzo, were decorated with delicate frescoes showing scenes of harmony between humans and animals. Shepherds caring for sheep, farmers working alongside oxen, and even what appeared to be ceremonies where animals and people occupied almost equivalent spaces. These frescoes are extraordinary, Lucia commented as they slowly advanced. They show a revolutionary visual theology for their time. It's not just respect toward animals, it's a true spiritual communion with them. The passageway descended in a gentle slope, going beneath the foundations of the basilica. Finally, it led to a circular room of modest size but breathtaking beauty. In the center was a simple altar of polished stone, and the vaulted ceiling was decorated with an impressive mosaic representing the cosmos as understood in the 16th century, with the sun, moon, stars, and, surprisingly, animal figures interwoven with the constellations. It's a ceremonial chapel, Elena explained, recognizing the design. But unlike other chapels of the period, there's no visual hierarchy placing humans above other creatures. The most extraordinary feature of the room was a small circular opening at the top of the dome, carefully designed to allow a ray of sunlight to enter at specific moments. "The window to the sky that speaks once a year," Brother Thomas murmured. Remembering the description found in the documents, Gabriel checked his watch. "It's almost 10 in the morning. If this opening is designed for the equinox, we've arrived a few days late to witness the complete phenomenon. But we could calculate exactly when it will occur," Isabel suggested, examining the room's layout. "Many ancient churches have markers on the floor that indicate where the light falls on specific dates." While exploring the chapel, they discovered a concealed cabinet in the wall, similar to the one they had found in the other basilica. Upon opening it, they found a collection of perfectly preserved documents, protected in sealed boxes. "This is a historical treasure," Lucia exclaimed, carefully reviewing one of the manuscripts. "These are detailed records of the Brotherhood's ceremonies and teachings. Look, here are theological treatises arguing why animals should be considered with the same respect as humans." Brother Thomas took one of the oldest documents, reading, "With growing excitement, they speak of a complementary revelation that would occur when the world was ready to receive the complete truth about creation. They believed that someday their secret teachings would be rediscovered and openly shared with the world." As they continued exploring the documents, Elena noticed something on the chapel floor. "Look at these marks on the pavement. They're metal inlays forming a kind of solar calendar." Indeed, the marble floor had metal inlays arranged in a circular pattern, with symbols that matched those on the ring and marks that indicated different positions where the light might fall throughout the year. "If I'm interpreting this correctly," Isabel said, studying the design, "the ray of light creates a special effect during the spring equinox, but it also marks other important days throughout the year." Gabriel consulted the calendar on his phone. "Today is April 24th. According to this design, the next significant date would be," he traced the line with his finger, following the pattern, "April 30th. May Eve," Lucia observed with growing interest. "A date traditionally associated with the celebration of fertility and renewal in many cultures." The sound of footsteps approaching through the passageway interrupted their exploration. Instinctively, they all tensed, preparing for a possible confrontation. To their surprise, it was Marcos who appeared at the chapel entrance, with Tizon trotting calmly by his side. "How did you find us?" Gabriel asked, surprised to see the dog inside the religious precinct. "It wasn't me who found you," Marcos responded, pointing to the animal. Tizon began behaving strangely, as if detecting something important. "He practically dragged me to the cloister and then directly to that open panel." The dog calmly advanced to the center of the chapel, sitting next to the altar as if recognizing the place. His behavior was so deliberate, so out of the ordinary, even for a well-trained working dog, that everyone watched him fascinated. "It's as if he knew exactly where we are and why we're here," Elena commented. Brother Tomas approached, the animal kneeling to be at his level. "Perhaps he does know," he murmured. "The documents mention that animals, especially dogs, were considered by the Brotherhood as beings with a special connection to the sacred. They believed they could perceive spiritual truths that humans had forgotten." At that moment, as if responding to an invisible call, a thin ray of sunlight penetrated through the dome's opening, falling exactly where Tizon was sitting. The effect was almost magical. The ray illuminated the animal's fur, creating a golden halo around him. "This cannot be coincidence," Lucia whispered, observing how the light slowly moved, following the pattern marked on the floor. The ray of light continued its trajectory until it illuminated one of the mosaics on the wall, revealing details that weren't previously visible. A Latin inscription that had remained hidden under centuries of patina. Isabel, using her experience in restoration, carefully cleaned the surface with a handkerchief. The words emerged with clarity: veritas omnia vincit, in animalia humanitas, in humanitate divinitas. Truth conquers all, in animals humanity, in humanity divinity. It's the Brotherhood's motto, Brother Thomas explained, translating the Latin. Their central belief that the divine manifests itself through all creation without artificial hierarchies. As they contemplated the meaning of this discovery, Gabriel made a decision. We must document all this professionally before someone tries to hide it again, not just for its historical value, but for what it represents. Lucia nodded, her face illuminated by a mixture of emotion and determination. For generations, these teachings were silenced because they challenged established power structures. Imagine how our relationship with the natural world might change if these ideas had been an integral part of our religious and cultural tradition. During the following hours, they worked meticulously to document every aspect of the hidden chapel. They photographed the frescoes, catalogued the documents, mapped the astronomical marks on the floor. Isabel used her contacts at the Conservation Institute to organize an official documentation team that could certify the discovery without immediately alerting ecclesiastical authorities. At sunset, when they finally emerged from the secret passageway, they encountered a surprise. At the entrance to the cloister waited Carlos Duarte, the restorer from the Basilica of San Lorenzo, accompanied by an elderly woman dressed with elegant sobriety. "Let me introduce you to Dr. Carmen Sotomayor," Carlos said as they approached, Emeritus Director of the National Historical Archive and, more importantly, current guardian of the Brotherhood's legacy. The revelation left them momentarily speechless. Dr. Sotomayor smiled at their surprise. "For centuries," she explained, in a serene voice, "we have protected this knowledge, waiting for the right moment to share it with the world again. Each generation has had its guardians, people in strategic positions who ensure that the memory isn't completely lost." "You knew about our investigation from the beginning?" Gabriel asked. "Of course," the woman responded. "The anonymous complaint you received wasn't coincidence. We've been observing for years, identifying people who might be prepared to receive these teachings. Your team demonstrated the perfect combination of intellectual curiosity and spiritual openness." Elena looked at Tizon, who remained calmly seated next to Brother Tomas. "And the dog? Is he also part of this?" Carlos Duarte exchanged a knowing look with Dr. Sotomayor. "Let's say Tizon received special training beyond what his official supervisors know. Dogs have been our allies in this mission for generations." "Who else is part of this?" Lucia asked. "More people than you might imagine," the doctor replied. "Academics, religious, figures, conservators, ordinary people who share the vision of a world where all creatures are respected as manifestations of the sacred." Gabriel processed this information with amazement. What had begun as a simple investigation into potentially falsified documents had become the discovery of a secret spiritual tradition that had survived centuries of persecution and oblivion. "And now what?" he finally asked. Dr. Sotomayor pointed to the devices where they had stored the collected documentation. "Now you are part of this. Guardians of knowledge that could change the way we understand our relationship with the natural world. It's not just about preserving a historical secret, but about sharing wisdom when the world is ready to receive it." Brother Tomas, who had remained quiet during this exchange, spoke then. "I believe the world is ready now. More than ever, we need to remember that we are part of a greater whole, not absolute owners of creation." The doctor smiled with approval. "That's why you are here, the new generation of guardians who will decide how and when to share these teachings." As the sun set over Madrid, tinting the basilica's domes with gold, the group contemplated the extraordinary path opening before them. They had not only discovered a historical treasure, but a living tradition that connected the present with the past and opened possibilities for a future where humans and animals could coexist in greater harmony and mutual respect. Tizon, as if perfectly understanding the significance of the moment, approached each of them, receiving caresses and looks of new understanding. He was no longer simply a detector dog trained for a mission, but a living symbol of the connection they had rediscovered, the same one those ancient Brotherhood members had protected through the centuries. April 30th, Gabriel remembered. According to the calendar in the chapel, that date has a special meaning. The renewal ceremony, Dr. Sotomayor confirmed. A ritual that celebrates the interconnection of all forms of life. If you truly wish to complete your initiation into these mysteries, you should be present. As they left the basilica, each carrying with them not only physical evidence, but also a new understanding of the world, they knew their lives had been irrevocably changed. The ring, now again kept by Brother Tomas, was more than a historical relic. It was a symbol of continuity, a bridge between the past and a future where the ancient teachings of the Brotherhood might finally find their place. In a world that desperately needed to remember the value of all life, and Tizon, trotting calmly alongside them like a silent guardian, seemed to carry in his intelligent eyes the ancestral wisdom that had always been there, patiently waiting to be rediscovered by those with eyes to see and hearts to understand. Dear listeners, we hope this journey through the hidden secrets of the Basilica of San Lorenzo and the mysterious Brotherhood of Sacred Creation has touched your hearts. To continue exploring stories that invite us to reflect on our connection with all forms of life, we have prepared a special collection that you can find by clicking to your left. If this narrative awakened your curiosity and emotion, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this audio a like. Each week we bring unique stories that explore the depth of our existence and the invisible bonds that unite us with all living things. What other mysteries wait to be discovered? What ancient wisdom deserves to be remembered? We await you in the comments to share your reflections on this journey through time and spirit.